Thank you, everybody, for coming. Welcome to the City of Beaumont Planning Commission. This is a special meeting on Thursday, October 26th. We'll call the meeting to order today at 6:22. Can we start with a roll call, please?
Commissioner Rurick?
Here.
Commissioner Dale?
Here.
Commissioner Tinker? Vice Chairman Smith?
Here.
Chairman St. Martin?
Okay. Do we have any conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed tonight?
No.
All right. With that, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda at this time?
No.
All right. We'll go to item one. Oh, I moused the wrong way. No, I can't read. See here. Item one, public comment period. Any one person may address the Planning Commission on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table and give it to the city clerk. There is a 3-minute limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. State law prohibits the Planning Commission from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments. And do we have any requests to speak at this time?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Vice Chairman, can I just correct for the record the date of October 27th, not 26th?
Did I say the wrong date?
Yeah, I just wanted to put it on record.
Apologies.
Dates.
Okay, item number 2. 2A is amendment number 1 to the Heartland Development Agreement 16-DA-01.
Thank you, Plan Commission Chair, members of the Plan Commission. The City of Beaumont received a request to amend an existing development agreement that was dated back in 1993 for the Heartland Specific Plan. The existing agreement is set to expire on December 9th of 2018. Projects is fully entitled, included recorded final maps for 981 residential units between Oak Valley Parkway, State Route 60 Freeway, west of Protura Boulevard. Project is comprised of approximately 417 acres, subdivided into those single-family residential lots, 4 commercial parcels, 24 industrial parcels that are basically overlying open space area. So while the specific plan has those, staff does not see any way that the industrial properties will ever develop. So it's predominantly a 981 residential single-family home specific plan with some smaller commercial parcels, 1 elementary school, 4 parks, and 1 sewer lift station.
And if I can clarify, that's what it calls for in the specific plan, but not what the map's entitled. So the maps just have the 981 houses. There are no elementary schools mapped within the map.
So, but there's a lot dedicated for that purpose?
No.
No.
The school district did not request that when the maps came through.
Okay.
To include that, or when we did the tentative maps originally. So although it was included in the original specific plan at the time of the maps, the school district was not interested in a school lot.
Okay.
Thank you. The final maps were recorded, were first approved in 2007 and then again in 2014. The project EIR 93-01 was approved in 1993. The current owner of Heartland project, LV Heartland, has agreed to pay the city $3 million in consideration of mutual covenants, conditions, and agreements in the amendment. I'm going to go through some of the major deal points within the amendment to the development agreement. And that would be that the property owner would receive a 10-year extension of its development agreement until December 9th, 2028, with additional option to extend 5 years until December 9th of 2033. Certain conditions are met. Heartland shall receive exonerations for the improvement bonds for the bridge and mitigation areas that have been completed. Heartland shall receive no right, or shall have no rights to receive any fee credits under the original memorandum of understanding for the Protura Bridge project. The water well on parcel 14 will be granted back to Heartland. The city shall relinquish its right to accept the offered dedication for parcels 15 and 17, provided that Heartland conveys those parcels for conservation purposes as required by California Department of Fish and Wildlife, in compliance with all land use entitlements and conditions of approval applicable to the property. Heartland will assume from the city's obligation for habitat mitigation on site for the 2006 Habitat Mitigation Monitoring Program. City will act as a new agency, as the lead agency, to form a new CFD, Communities Facilities District, with an overall tax rate not to exceed 2% for the project. The future CFD will not have a 2% escalator. The Communities Facilities District will not have a maintenance services tax, but instead the HOA for the property shall be responsible for all maintenance services. We did provide a list of maintenance obligations for that future homeowners association, and that's been attached to the agreement as Exhibit C. The new CFD shall include a public safety services tax of $419 per lot, subject to an inflator of greater consumer price index or 5%. Heartland will have no obligation to cooperate, participate, or otherwise fund the formation of enhanced infrastructure financing district or any other financing of the Portrera interchange, or make an additional contribution to the Portrera interchange above and beyond existing road and bridge fees, mitigation fees already contemplated to be paid as part of the project's mitigation. And the last major deal point is that Heartland and its successors and assignees may utilize lien contracts in lieu of bonds as security under subdivision improvement agreement of the project. Those lien contracts shall provide that prior to obtaining any type of permit, including grading or commencing the installation and construction of any portion of the improvements required by the subdivision improvement agreement, owner shall deposit fees for inspections, tests, or other related purposes, shall substitute payment of performance bonds in amounts satisfactory to the city in place of the lien contract. It's really the extension of the development agreement, which would mean the project entitlements for the specific plan would stay in force and effect until 2028, and has a possibility of being extended to 2033. The documents used to implement the project are the amendment to the development agreement, memorandum of understanding, and settlement agreement. The Planning Commission is only asked to recommend approval of the development agreement amendment to the City Council. The City Council will take action on the other two documents. From the standpoint of the California Environmental Quality Act, the Environmental Impact Report, and I have provided the state clearinghouse number, was prepared and certified in 1994 for the Heartland Specific Plan. Approval of the revisions to a development agreement neither change the project details nor the environmental analysis previously conducted. There is no possibility a significant effect on the environment would occur from approval of the proposed revisions. The action then qualifies as CEQA exempt under section 15.061B3 of the CEQA guidelines. Specifically, the activity is covered by general rule that CEQA applies only to projects which have potential for causing significant effect on the environment, or can be seen with certainty there is no possibility that the activity in question may have a significant effect on the environment. The activity is not subject to CEQA.
And the activity in question is the development agreement.
That's correct. That's the item before you tonight. In order to recommend approval, the Planning Commission must make the following findings relative to the proposed development agreement between the city and the owner of the property. The fiscal impact related to this, I stated before, there's a one-time payment of $3 million to the city of Beaumont at the close of escrow to the new owner, or on February 28th, 2017, whatever comes first. The agreement eliminates fee credits pursuant to the original memorandum of understanding in the sum of $1,081,975. Also under the amendment, Heartland will assume the balance of the environmental mitigation project, and staff and our attorneys have estimated that figure to be roughly $3 million obligation to continue mitigation efforts. And lastly, the amendment calls for establishment of a CFD. And like many of the new CFDs within the city that City Council is doing now and approving, there's been a policy change to mandate and include a public safety services fee or a tax to cover police and fire services to each of these areas. And that has been included within this amendment to the agreement as well. And that's that $419 per lot, subject to the inflator of CPI or 5%, whatever is greater a year. So, just to summarize, it has good financial benefits to the city. It provides additional 10 to 15 years from 2018 moving forward for the project owner or the property owner. Do keep in mind that the project has recorded final maps, so those are single-family lots out there. It provides a level of, I think Rebecca and I were saying, a certainty or a sense of confidence that it'll be developed together with the development agreement in accordance with the specific plan, as opposed to a worst-case scenario where you're going to have 981 lots developed, possibly not by the same person or haphazardly throughout the future. So that's another thing that we thought was important to remember is it is recorded final maps out there, so those don't expire. And I'm here to answer any questions. Bob Patterson from our city attorney's office is here to answer any questions. Staff recommends the Plan Commission, 1, hold a public hearing, and 2, recommend to the City Council approval of the First Amendment to the Heartland Development Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have questions for staff?
On the CFD, you're talking about the council's made some changes and moving forward. The CFD at 2% with no increase, is that what it's stating?
Correct.
And is that 2% consistent with what we've been seeing percentage-wise?
Previously, they went up, escalated by 2% a year.
Okay.
Our current council is removing that escalator, so this development agreement would require the developer to do a new CFD with no escalator.
Okay, but the 2% amount of it held at 2% is consistent with what, it's not higher than,
Oh, the
Yes.
total tax.
The total tax,
Ryan
yes.
Forbath of Stradlin and Yoka Law Firm, who negotiated the Part D CFD and the other CFD that the name of escapes me, Argent. He has engaged in numerous conversations and discussions with the city council about what is and is not acceptable to the city council in terms of these new standalone CFDs that the city has been looking at. And Mr. Forbath spent many hours negotiating the terms of the CFD with the developer's attorney, Robert Haight of another firm. And so the council's wishes, we believe, are embodied in the CFD provisions.
okay. And the 1,087,000 credits, it says it eliminates the fee credits. Were these fee credits going to be going back to Heartland or originally, and now they're no longer in existence? Is that what that's saying?
Yes, that's correct. The background of this project is that it went through bankruptcy in 2006, 2007, and at that time, the then city manager signed an MOU with the developer whereby, well, I'll say that the MOU stated that the developer was entitled to certain development impact fee credits associated with the cost of some bridge materials to the tune of over $1 million. The exact number is here. It's $1,081,975. And so the developer is releasing, terminating, eliminating any right to receive that fee credit in the future as part of this overall transaction.
Okay. I'm good.
And that's kind of related because the city bought the materials and built the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I think I already know the answer because I think, Kyle, you're saying it, but why 10 years? I mean, that's a long time. 10 plus 5, so 15 years. This will get locked in place. And the reason why I asked that is because I guess the philosophy of the city changes as time goes on. We just saw that with the warehouse, so kind of a little scarred from that. And so when we say something like we're going to agree on now, I mean, we're locking that in for the next 15 years, right? At which point, if nothing was done, then they'll reattack, and then we'll redo this. Why not something more like 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, something where in the middle of the road? Why so far out?
Well, first, let me explain the provisions. The original development agreement was a 20-year development agreement, which is not an uncommon time frame for a development of this size. So nothing has been done to the dirt out there. There's been some rough grading, but no homes or infrastructure have been built to speak of other than the bridge and an approach to the bridge. And so given that the initial time frame was 20 and we're looking at 10 years now, I don't think it's unreasonable in that context and in the comparison with other development agreements in similar communities. The term of the development agreement is 10 years. The 5-year option to extend would only be capable of being exercised in the event that the developer has pulled 500 building permits during the initial 10 years. So the 5 years isn't an automatic gimme. They have to meet a threshold of 500 building permits in order to get that 5 years. And then the other rationale for the 10 years would be the builders' anticipation of what the market can absorb over that time frame. And the developer is here, and we can talk to them about that. But that's the information that I have on the timing.
Okay. I mean, do you have any idea when they might get started, though? I mean, are we looking at maybe in the near 2 or 3 years, maybe seeing some homes out there?
We've been told that the intent, at least, of the buyer that was on the hook and may still be on the hook in escrow was that they start right away, like within the next year. I'm looking over at the developer to make sure I'm not speaking out of school here. So it's our understanding from speaking to them, and of course this is what we've been told, that the construction or building permits would be sought within the next year. And I see heads nodding.
That'd be nice to see movement out there.
Doug Champion, the layman representative is Lisa Gordon. She's here, and the layman attorney, Douglas Champion of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, is here also.
Okay, I understand now. You get where I was coming from, because sometimes the motivation of the community changes, and you don't want to be locked into something that said, man, city council from 5 years ago, like we recently had been through, and now we want to change things. So I understand the logic.
Yeah,
makes total sense.
usually the time frame is a lot based on the size. They want, in order to be giving us what we're asking for, they want an assurance that they can reasonably expect to finish the project and not be stuck halfway through. So the time frames are usually trying to get an understanding of what the market, like you said, can handle and get through the project in the time frame, so that we have both assurances on both ends that we're getting what we need through the entire life of the project.
It makes sense. And the 500 homes to kick it over to another 5 years, it's not. I like that, because that's not a gimme. That you got to be invested. It's not just a matter of saying I filled out a form and we're good to go for another 5 years. Just because I can, and there's a microphone, I did want to make one comment since the developer's here. I know this is final plans done, but it's just my usual rhetoric. There is not a community center in that area. There's a big community center that we use a lot called the Chatney Center. My kids are a big proponent of that. We use it a lot for Boy Scouts. As I know, when we see Sundance go through changes, party will come up and they'll end up changing things and moving houses around and changing lots. So I know things change, but they got to be driven on your end. With that, just something to be considering is something I think the city does need a community center that way. I also think when you guys develop this more, I know it's already final plans, but things change. Running tracks are nice for the community, a place where kids can go out and people can do something. I was just talking to a friend. If you go up Palm Avenue and you go up there at night, there's something different about Palm than there is about other parts of Beaumont. And what that is there's a place for people to walk their dog. There's a place for people to meet other citizens and say hi and know their neighbors, and there's churches. I mean, that's something that I think we're losing in our communities when we do these master plans. There's no a faith-based organization, whatever religion you are, domination, but it sure is nice when there's kind of an anchor point, a Catholic church up on the street or a Baptist church down the hall, and I sent my kids down there so they can go do some volunteer work, or a library, for crying out loud. So just because I have the microphone, I implore on you to consider that, because remember, we're going to be here for the rest of our lives, and you're living in a community, and I'm sure those are the same things that you would want for yourself and for your kids. Over.
Thank you. Couple questions I have. This agreement, there's a $3 million payment to the city. The relief of no, I'm drawing blanks right now.
Impact.
Yeah, the relief on the impact fees, and then the developer taking over the responsibility for the mitigation monitoring plan, which is a kind of a big deal. I understand as well. What's the benefit for the developer at this point? Yeah, what are they getting out of this agreement?
10 years.
The 10 plus 5.
So if this expires, then they don't have authorization to build, or how to? I'm not quite sure on how the mechanics of that work.
There's also the bonds. That's a big one. They're currently holding quite a bit of bonds that they're having to pay costs on, and by releasing them and going to the lien, they open up income in order to do the projects. They'll have to post the bonds when they get to that planning area or when they get to that improvement. But we have quite a big folder of bonds, because when you record a map, you have to post the bonds for the entire improvement. Right. So the big thing that they'll get as well is being able to release all of those bonds. They won't have to pay those premiums, and they'll open up that credit by going to a lien agreement, which basically says that we have a right to lien the property if we need to, because they didn't do an improvement, and sell it and take the money. But there's a big benefit there for them to get rid of that. That's a big benefit for their new buyer, not having to replace every single bond immediately. They can just put bonds as they do the different planning areas.
Okay,
as
so
well.
as this is in several different phases of a map, as each one would come forward, there'd be improvement bonds, grading bonds.
Most of the other tracks that you've seen, yes, because they're going concurrently through. They only final map what they're ready to do next. This, in order to do the entitlements, because of what Lehman Brothers had gone through, they recorded all of their maps, which means that they've put bonds for all 981 areas. No other developer has that right now, because they only record the map when they're ready to go that area and post those bonds, and they've released the old ones. So there's a lot of money on the table for them with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought the question might come up as well, and I thought about it from their perspective. So it's not just the 10 years in terms of time to finish it. It's also the assurance from the prospective buyer of the property. So if you're selling something and it has 2 years left on a development agreement, you have final maps, but you're looking to get assurance for that buyer that they're going to be able to finish the project under the development with the different benefits that Rebecca just outlined. It's definitely worth it to that property purchaser, the person that's going to purchase the property, to have a good timeline that they can expect to finish it before they invest. I don't know how much they're selling it for.
Right.
But a lot
Whatever
of money,
it is.
a significant dollar amount into this community. So they're looking for city council to make an investment back to the prospective buyer to guarantee that they're going to hold true to the development agreement in place for the next 10 years.
So as you alluded to, if the development agreement expires, then the area is not held to the specific plan anymore. The architectural standards don't hold. A lot of the kind of the more it falls back more to what the city guideline is versus that specific.
The specific
plan
plan
guidelines.
is a zoning document, so that doesn't expire. I think it's more items like even being able to do a CFD and get bonds.
Okay.
There's, if they don't have a development agreement that says they can use those financing options, the council could then decide, well, we
So
don't
it's
want to.
assurances more
There's
on the-
assurances on a lot of different options within that the city's going to work to process their applications as fast as possible. That there's assurances that the staff is doing what we can to process everything that's stated within the development agreement on their behalf, and that we don't have unnecessary delays. We don't just
Yeah.
decide to.
So it's
take
more
our time.
the assurance is the implementation of the project.
Exactly. It's not the
Okay.
zoning standards, because those are set.
Right.
Those don't change, unless you take the specific plan amendment. But that also, if there's no development agreement, we could possibly change the specific plan amendment without their
Right.
Right.
allowance. We could
Right.
just come in and say, we want to change it. We do a specific plan amendment, staff led. There's no guarantee to the developer where a development agreement says they get that approval to stay
Okay.
until such time as the development agreement's over.
So,
we have more
they're
capability
granting
to
us certain
change.
financial assets, and we're providing them with assurance that
That
the
we're not going to
project,
make a
as
change
stated,
from a
is-
staff perspective without their request to make that change.
Yeah, the specific plan is locked in, and the EIR is basically locked in, whereas that wouldn't be the case if the development agreement expired and the city might decide that it wants to go in a different direction. So it creates a, package, sort of a turnkey package for the developer where they're assured of, okay, we've got our EIR, we've got this specific plan, and then we have the right to establish this CFD, and we basically can do most of the project on the staff level now. It's pretty simple for them, whereas if they don't have the vested rights that they're given under a development agreement, then, the council could obviously have discretion to change things, which could change the financial complexion of the project for the developers. So the developer's buying certainty, and, obviously the city's getting these monetary benefits of the $3 million, the release of the any argument they may have that the development impact fee credit is due to them, and then they're going to be assuming the environmental mitigation project, which the city is currently obligated to do, and which the developer estimates is a $3 million ticket. So, one way of looking at it is that this is a $7 million benefit to the city.
Plus the cost of public
Right.
safety.
So there's the, $3 million cash. There's a release from the development impact fee credit. There is the assumption by the developer of the environmental mitigation program at, they say $3 million. And then the new CFD program calls for a public safety fee, which will provide financing for police and fire that was not part of the CFD 93-1. So that's going to take a burden off of the city to fund police and fire through other resources. So it allows the city to have more, funding for police and fire, obviously. One of the things that I believe 93-1 provided for was the maintenance was going to be through the CFD. So in other words, the, parkways and whatnot, landscaping, streets would be maintained through the CFD mechanism. But now that isn't going to be the case. The HOA is going to take over the obligation for funding those infrastructure items through, the charging of assessments to homeowners. So we've, through this negotiation, sort of rejiggered the financial picture to be more in line with what we believe the policies of the city are and the desires of the various commissions and the city council.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering that. That kind of
Yeah, it's-
helps to kind of bring that full picture to me. I look at this as kind of two ways. The fact that there are legal lots that exist out there, I think that has a lot to do with, the decision and kind of the, maybe comfort there is with extending the agreement. If their map hadn't been recorded yet, as Commissioner, Ray I was kind of alluding to, I think there's some opportunity in there to maybe, re-envision as the community priorities change. But there's 918 legal single-family lots that exist.
Final maps.
Yeah, no, yeah, they could sell off individual lots if they wanted to. I mean, you couldn't build on it because you don't have access or anything, but you could technically sell off those lots. They're legal and exist. So thank you. I appreciate that. Do we have, let's see, do we have any requests to speak on this item?
No, Vice Chairman.
Okay. Does anybody here have any questions for the applicant?
I don't.
I do not.
Okay. So I guess we'll open and close a public hearing then at 6:52 with no request to speak. And do we have a motion or any more discussion up here amongst the commission?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to City Council that they approve Amendment 1 to the Heartland Development Agreement.
Now, second.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Rarick and a second by Commissioner Dale to approve.
Subject to the findings listed.
Those words weren't on there. Yes, subject to the findings listed.
Yeah, that's findings 1 through 6 in the staff report on page 3.
Correct. So then I'll just repeat just to be clear. So I make a motion that we recommend to City Council that they approve Amendment 1 to the Heartland Development Agreement with considering the findings of 1 through 6, incorporating those on page 3 of the staff report.
And I'll second that.
I got it all.
I think we're covered.
All right. Roll call. Commissioner Rarick,
Yes.
Commissioner Dale,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Smith.
Yes. Okay. With that, that completes the business items for the Planning Commission. Do we have any comments from the Planning Director?
No.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending. We will adjourn this meeting at 6:53.